Welcome to the Mindset with Mako podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Mako. Join me each week as we delve into the transformative power of mindset and learn from successful business owners, influencers, and inspirational people who have changed their lives through the power of their mindset.
All right. Welcome everyone to the Mindset with Mako show. Today we have a very special guest. Not just a man who's accomplished a lot in his life, but also a close, dear friend, someone that I really connect to and relate to in a lot of different ways. He's smashed multiple records across the real estate industry, and he's a standout in his company that he works for, EDGEHomes. Boo Maddox, welcome to the podcast.
Dude, this is fun. I'm excited to be here. This is sick.
You want to know something funny?
Yeah.
Something cringe that I was thinking about on the way here. Me and Boo have sold a lot of houses together. Yeah. And I remember every time we would introduce a new client, I don't know if you ever heard me say, I think you did maybe once or twice, I would say, because Boo's real name is Steven, but he goes by Boo. We'll go into that later. But I would tell clients, I was like, you know why they call him Boo, right? And they'd be like, why? I'd be like, because he's scary good at his job. It never got a laugh. It was like, I was like, I don't know why the hell I'm saying this.
It's always funny because people always ask like they heard it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I'm Boo.
Well, or like a Boo.
Yeah.
Like,
or Bill. I get Bill a lot.
Bill?
Bill? No, Boo. Is that your real name? No.
No.
Okay.
What's the story behind that?
Everybody that has kids understands this, but when you're little, you kind of get nicknames based on what you're doing or just like how you're acting. Like you just get these nicknames from your parents.
Right.
Mine just stuck with me. And it was kind of like always a pet name from my family growing up. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of became more than that for me. And we could talk about that a little bit later, but like it's always kind of been what those closest to me called. And then it's just kind of spread from there.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Okay.
There's not a rhyme or a reason, but it's definitely who I am at this point, which is a weird thing to say.
Okay.
But
I thought it was maybe like your first Halloween, you dressed up as a ghost or something.
No, honestly, it was just like the family nickname. I think it's because I'm junior, right? So they always wanted a nickname of some sort for me, and that one just stuck because it's better than Steve and Steven.
Have your own identity kind of thing. Makes sense.
Yeah, so it's been good for me.
That's good. I like it. Short and sweet to the point.
And I mean, now like in sales, like most people remember somebody named Boo that was trying to sell them a house, right?
Steven.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody, there's
true.
a bunch of Stevens trying to sell you a house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's weird whenever I hear someone call you Steven. I'm like, who the frick is Steven?
I'm at the point now where like I take it like offensively. Like I did somebody was trying to pitch me on something the other day. And they kept calling me Steven the whole meeting after I introduced myself as Boo.
Oh, really?
I don't know if like they felt uncomfortable calling it or whatever. But to me, it's like you were just calling me the wrong name for
the whole hour.
Yeah. Like I'm not weird about it. Like I'm not trying to be obnoxious about it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It feels weird now when people call me Steven.
Right. I feel that. I mean, after a while, you take on that identity.
Yeah. Which is a weird, for me, when I first started, like I used to almost be very embarrassed of it. Right. Like it wasn't, nobody wants to be called Boo at 18 or 19 or 20 or 21 or 22, especially when they're trying to work with adults at a young age. Like it was always Steven. It was always very prim. It was always very proper. Boo was like, it took a while to get comfortable with it.
That's cool. I love that you've grown into it.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive in. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about kind of where you grew up, how you grew up, what your childhood was like.
Yeah. So I grew up right here in Utah, born and raised. Don't think I'll ever leave. Like I do truly love Utah. I love what it's about. I love what it's becoming.
Where in Utah?
In Highland.
Cool.
So that was, we moved a couple of times early on, but like I lived in the same house since I was like 8 or 9 years old.
Nice.
Went to Highland Elementary, went to Mountain Ridge Junior High School, went to Lone Peak High School. I still technically live in Lone Peak High School boundaries. So not super far away from home because I do love where I was raised.
Right.
Yeah.
The apple doesn't fall from the tree.
Yeah.
Fall far from the tree. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I like all of the reasons why I loved it growing up are the same reasons why I want my kids to be able to enjoy a lot of the same benefits of living in that area.
Like what?
I felt like it was a great area to be raised because it was competitive. Mm-hmm. I would say like it was a very intense environment. I would say in high school, like in my house, but outside of like kids were going to camps early, kids like for sports and for different things like that. Like it was a very competitive.
So there was a lot of ambition in the neighborhood.
I would say that. Yeah. Like there was a lot of ambition, and maybe that was like that was probably more my own lens on it than anything.
Sure.
But like you had Highland, you had Alpine, and like the money started to get bigger and bigger and bigger into what Alpine is today, which is one of the top, 2 or 3 most expensive zip codes in the state.
Yep.
It was there's definitely a lot of drawbacks to it. Lone Peak has a high suicide rate, I think, relative to other high schools, because I do think it is an intense place to live, I think, at times. A demanding place to live at times.
You think that has a lot or anything to do with the amount of money people's parents make?
So growing up, I would say yes. I would say, though, now that I'm in my 30th year, about to turn 30, there's a little bit more wisdom. Sounds like the wrong word, but I think I look at things a little bit differently than I used to. I think the majority of what I was feeling, or what a lot of my friends were feeling, was more put on by themselves, trying to measure up to parents, more than it was parents putting direct pressure on their kids.
Because you see your parents so highly successful and motivated that it's like, damn, I got to live up to mom and dad and be on their level one day.
Yeah. And I think having successful parents does one of 2 things for you. And this has like been my philosophy early on, is it either messes you up in a good way, where it makes you want to go above and beyond in what you're doing, because you understand where you came from and everything that's gone into making you be what you are today.
Right.
Or it completely messes you up and sends you off the deep end trying to chase something that you're never going to have.
Right. It's one or the other. It can either be like ultra motivating or ultra demotivating. Right. And I feel like that's where you see the rich kids that get into drugs and alcohol and get super depressed, because it's like, damn, I can't live up to that expectation, so I am worthless, or I'm not worthy. Yeah.
And those expectations are really interesting, because I think if you were to sit down to parents today and say, hey, what were your expectations of the kids? It would not be the same thing that the kids and my friends that I was running around with at the time were feeling. Like I said, I think a lot of it was self-imposed, because we understood, maybe we didn't understand, but we knew that there was a lot that was going to be expected of us, I think.
Right.
Because of how we were raised and where we were coming from.
Right. Because you're a Highland boy.
Yeah. Like you know that you were raised a certain kind of way, and that people are going to make assumptions of you.
You don't want to be the mess up. You don't want to be the one in the group that doesn't do something with their life.
Yeah. And so I think it's messed with a lot of people, but I think there's also some of my friends and kids that I grew up with that are doing some unbelievable things at a really young age. Right.
Yeah.
It's
I can
really
see,
cool to see,
not just focus on the bad, but I can see all the good that comes from that too. I think you're a very good example of that. I don't think the things that you've accomplished and where you are in life just happened out of luck or even just hard work, but like your mindset, how it was instilled at a very young age, you know?
Well, I think I was raised probably different than like a lot of how my siblings were raised, just because of the timing of like where the success for my family came in and when it really started to actually be wealth associated with that. Like I didn't grow up with money the same way that my siblings did. Right. So I grew up at a very unique time where the business was still just starting. It was prime 2008, 2009, 2010. Like that's when I was in high school.
Right.
And so a lot of the success that my family has today wasn't there the same way that it is now.
Gotcha.
So I was raised with a dad that was raised by a mom from Italy that barely spoke English, trying to do things that nobody in his family had done at that point, right? He has 6 siblings and none of them have done what he's done from like a creating a business standpoint.
For those of you that don't know, Boo's dad is the owner of EDGEHomes.
Yeah.
Founder and owner of EDGEHomes.
Founder and owner of EDGEHomes, which is now Utah's #1.
Biggest
Hold on,
local.
sorry, I can't say that. That's trademarked. They are the largest home builder in the state of Utah.
Gotcha. Who trademarked that?
EDGEHomes.
Bastards.
Well, it's the only way they get to say it is if they trademark it. So
I think they're #1 on a lot of other things though, but I'm not going to go into that. I don't want to get a complaint from the division.
Yeah. So when I first started, or when I was in high school, I mean, he started in 2009, 2010. I mean, literally at the bottom of the market at the time, and watching him go through that, I was raised differently than my siblings just based on the timeline alone.
So you were in high school when he started Edge or started building homes, getting into real estate.
Yeah. So he had started in 2000 doing real estate. He was bagging groceries at Macy's. He was a manager there. And my grandma was an escrow officer for First American Title.
Wow.
And she said, hey, I think you have a knack for this. You should come and be a marketer. So he became a marketer and worked his way up really, really quickly into First American.
Okay.
And then eventually he was dropping off checks for real estate agents at the time. And one of those days he looked at it and he opened up a paycheck for one of the big developers at the time. And he saw what the number was and he's like, okay, I want to learn how to do this.
So he looked at the escrow officer's check. He looked at the loan officer's check, the real estate agent's check.
Because if your title, you're the one that's
you're seeing out all the checks.
And at that time, they weren't doing direct deposits.
It was all
hand deliver the check.
Totally. And then he saw the developer's check and he was like, holy shit.
Well, and then he dropped it off and he knew what the amount was to the developer and he gave it to him. And the developer, this is his story.
Yeah.
Looked at it or grabbed the check, said, oh, sweet, thank you, threw it into his desk and went right back to his life. Like that amount of money that he just threw into his check, and what my dad knew that amount of money to be, messed with my dad more than it did that developer. My dad was like, okay, listen, I don't know anything about what you do, but I want to do it. And now I think he does it at the highest level in the state.
Right. I agree.
15, 20 years later, 23 years later.
That's crazy. Okay. Yeah. So in 2000,
he opened up his own brokerage with one of his friends at the time.
Okay.
It was Affiliated Realty Group. They brought on a whole bunch of agents. A whole bunch of the individuals that you see dominating today were people that he found and recruited kind of into the industry at the time.
Okay, gotcha. And you're watching all this from the sideline. You're in high school.
I wouldn't even say from the sideline. My dad was one of those dads that put me in the back of his truck and always answered phone calls when I was around, always took me to city council meetings, introduced me to people. Like my dad took full advantage of the situation and he didn't force me into the business or push me into it or anything, but it was just part of what we did.
He exposed you to it.
I would say that business in our life is as interwoven as faith, is as interwoven as physical health, like as these core tenets and pillars that we have as a Maddox family or as individuals. Business is not separate from that. Like I can't separate. I tried early on, but I will never be able to separate myself from business. It's just, that's what it's always going to be, because since the time I was 9 years old, I remember my dad answering those business phone calls and just listening in, right? Those were always the conversations we were having. That's what we talked about to bond over as we're doing different things in our life. And so business will never be separate. And so he gave me a front row seat a front row viewing seat, I guess, into everything that he was doing at every point along the way. And it's been, it's done a couple of different things for me, I would say.
So when you were being exposed to all that, he's bringing you to all these meetings, he's answering all these, calls around you, you're a sponge, right? You're just kind of absorbing everything and taking everything in. Were you initially like, whoa, this is cool, like I want to maybe get into this someday? Or were you like, screw that, like my dad looks like he's working 24/7, I want to go do something else?
So I think who Boo is as a person is somebody that thoroughly has to be having fun with whatever I'm doing. Otherwise, it's hard for me to invest in it, right? Work, friends, family, whatever. Like if I'm not having fun, that's like a major dictator for me about what I'm doing. So I was one of those big proponents of love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life growing up. Like so I had some grand visions about what I wanted to go and do, and none of them were real estate. Watching what my dad did and went through, I was like, dude, listen.
Forget that.
This does not seem as cool as going and being a sports agent.
So that's what you want to do?
I don't think I ever firmly decided what I wanted to do. I think the goal for me was going to be to get a law degree at some point, because I figured my dad always said he didn't graduate high school, right?
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, he didn't graduate high school, tried to do college, didn't really do anything with it, and is as successful as he is today. But one of his biggest things is he feels like if he had a law degree, people would take him a little bit more seriously, right?
Maybe back in his day for sure. Nowadays, like, no, right? That's changed.
Nowadays, I don't think anybody cares. When he walks in, he has enough accolades that people are working with him because of who he is, not because of a degree. Right.
But even just like kids our age or adults our age now, they don't really care about that anymore.
Yeah. And I think for him at the time when I was growing up, he was telling me what he saw all of his friends telling his kids, which are, you're going to grow up and you're going to go to college, and you're going to go do this and you're going to go do this and you're going to go do this. Because still to this day, I tell everybody, the day that I decided to drop out and go full time into real estate, I called him. I said, hey, and I thought it was going to be this whole big conversation. I thought he was going to be pissed. I thought he was going to try to talk me into staying. I said, hey, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to go full time at what I'm doing. I love you. I appreciate it. He goes, okay, let's go. And that was the end of the conversation. Wow. And he hasn't brought it up since. So like, I think he was just doing what he thought he was supposed to be doing at the time as a dad telling his kids, but he wasn't raising me with like a college mindset, I wouldn't say.
More of an entrepreneurial mindset for sure.
More of a, you go and earn what you want and what you think you're worth. And a piece of paper from school isn't going to dictate that regardless of what it says.
So true.
And I don't think I was ever stressed. I think one of the biggest benefits of having a dad that starts to be successful is I never really had to stress ahead of time and think, okay, what am I going to do with my life? Because I knew I was going to get it figured out at some point.
Right.
And so I always said law degree. I always said something like that, but it was never going to be real estate, especially when I was 16. I think at the time 2008 hit, 15, 16 years old, watching. I have vivid memories of my dad, like just coming home from work at the end of the day and just staring at the wall. Just like being like while we're watching a Jazz game or something, just zoning out for like 15 or 20 minutes. I didn't understand at the time what his world actually looked like.
Yeah.
Right. He gave us a front row seat, but he didn't let us see what happens behind the curtain, kind of.
Yeah.
Right. Like there was a lot that he kept and a lot that he shouldered himself, which was noble of him to do. But watching how he changed and going through that, I couldn't understand why anybody would want to still do that. To me, there was a lot more things that seemed like a lot more fun than doing what he was doing at the time.
You think he was just all in and he was like, this can't fail?
He didn't have another choice.
Right.
Right. He doesn't, like I said, he doesn't come from what he has done in one generation for my family, meaning where he has put us due to his hard work. The fears and the concerns that I have in my life are going to be so different than what his are because of what he went through.
Right.
So he didn't have somebody to call. He didn't have friends. He didn't have mentors. He didn't have, he truly had to do it alone.
Right.
Like he truly had, I'm going to get emotional talking about it. He truly had to go through some shit alone though. Right. And so just watching him go through that made it so that I was going to stay as far away from real estate as I could.
Do you think his resilience and like, you know, all the shit he had to go through is something that helped you make that jump to quitting college and just going all in?
I would like to say yes, but I don't think who I was at the time was actually thinking through the sacrifice that my dad had made for me. I think it probably gave me, I'm very much like a type of person that looks at other people and says, well, if they can do it, I can do it.
Okay.
And I think if nothing else, he was an unbelievable example, probably the best example that I had. Cause still at the time, everybody around me was telling me I had to go to college, just like I'm sure you had at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody around me, all of my friends were going to college. I didn't have a single friend that I could name at the time that wasn't going to school.
How long did you last?
Like 3 days, twice.
Wow. Well, that's crazy.
Yeah. I was terrible at school. No, I was god awful at school. Like I was so bad at school that like
I was too. I lasted a week at UVU.
I was so bad.
Yeah.
So bad. And I think if I was to go try to do it again today, I could probably get myself, I understand who I am, I think, better than I did at the time. Sure. I think I could probably help myself get through it at this point, but it sounds miserable to me.
Because you know how to apply yourself now.
Yeah, I know how to like engage myself, I think, better than I did at that time.
Yeah.
But I also had, this is also at the same time, I started mortgages before I actually started school, right? I started as a loan officer. I went on my mission for 2 years after working at Edge for a little while. Then I went on a church mission, came home on a Wednesday, and that Monday I started as a loan officer at First Colony.
Why did you pick loan officer over realtor?
My dad told me to.
Why?
Because the goal was to go to school. That was my plan. And just, I felt like the schedule of being a loan officer was a little bit more conducive than being a real estate agent. And at the time too, I didn't think that this was my law. I didn't think I was going to be in real estate.
It was going to be your part-time thing.
To me,
made money while you were in school.
Yeah. To me, it was either this or summer sales. I had tried a summer of summer sales before my mission and did terribly.
Screw that.
I did terrible. I think I sold two. I've never told anybody. I sold 2 accounts in the summer.
Oh, good. What was it?
Alarms.
Alarms. The respect to the door-to-door fam. I know a lot of guys that crush it. I could not do that shit.
I was so bad.
Oh my God.
I was so bad.
I tried it once too. I got one sale too, but I was like, I hate this.
I still think like people talk about the mission being the hardest thing they'd ever done at the time. Yeah. Dude, the summer that I did knocking doors.
Oh, you did a whole summer?
Easy after that. Yeah, my dad wouldn't let me come home. I called him crying halfway through July, like, hey man, this is bullshit. I'm out. And he's like, no, I'll come out. And this is who he is, right?
Yeah.
He goes, I'll come out and knock doors with you.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, my dad's not coming to knock doors with me.
And
I was like, okay, I'll finish out the summer. And I'm really glad I did. But I learned really quick, like, okay, that's not an option. So I figured if I can make similar money doing loans kind of on the side, it would give me and my dad something to talk about while I go to school for a little while, save up some money, and then ultimately go to law school.
Okay. So that was the plan.
That was the plan.
What happened?
I think I started to learn what real life was going to look like. I think the ideal life that I thought I was going to have was realistic. But I think at the time I realized you might not love what you do, but if you can provide for your family and you can provide a certain kind of lifestyle and your entire life can change because of it, it's amazing what you can enjoy.
Right.
From a professional standpoint.
Totally.
And more than that, I don't think money is everything, but I do also think that it can help make life easier on certain things. And I think I also learned about myself at the time that I don't think I was ever going to truly 100% love anything that I do. Like, I think that no matter what you do, no matter what your job is, no matter what you think, if you're in your perfect situation, I think that there are still parts of it that are not as enjoyable as other parts of it.
Of course. That's,
like, and I don't think I understood that growing up. I think I had like this fake image in my mind that like I could find something
that you loved every single day and you just shut up.
Well, that's what I feel like I was being taught.
That's
right?
why I almost don't like that saying that says like, find something you love and you're passionate about, you never work a day of your life. It's like, not really. Like, even if you're in your dream job, dream profession, there's going to be shitty days.
Yeah.
There's going to be stressful moments. There's going to be things you absolutely hate doing. But I feel like if the good outweighs the bad, then it's a great job.
Well, I think it's just like having a relationship, right? If you're always trying to find something outside of your relationship, there's always going to be something that seems more perfect than what you're currently doing.
Right.
Or that sounds weird. What you're currently in though.
Yeah.
Right. But it's amazing how a situation that, let's say, is 80% perfect can become better and better and better the more time and energy that you spend into making it what you want it to be.
Yeah.
And not just doing it because you have to, not because you have to go to work every day.
Right.
And so I think you've seen this because we've worked together for like different parts of my life, right? You've seen it at different stages. I think I enjoy what I do more than the majority of people enjoy what they do every day. Just like you see me out there with buyers, you see me selling the product, like you see how much I would say I am passionate about what I do.
Yeah.
In something that I didn't think I was going to love at all growing up because of what I saw.
Yeah, I definitely feel it. And I think the people like that we've worked with together, our clients also feel it. I think it's just the way you carry yourself. Cause like you said, one thing that's important to you is you want to have fun with whatever you're doing. And I can't think of a time at any time that we've gone and looked at homes or walked through model homes with clients that you're not like cracking a joke or like, just have a playful. I think it's important to be playful. Yeah. That's like one of the lost traits that people don't do enough. Being playful, like a childful playful, is something that just make any situation or any job or task that you're doing so much better. Yeah. And we talked about this last week, kind of when I called you. I think for so long, my focus was money that I lost a lot of that. And I think that's kind of the what I've been trying to learn about myself over this last year is like, what do I actually enjoy? Like what means a lot to me? Yeah, I went to this conference last week. One of the quotes and things that one of the speakers that it really stuck to me is, wanting to make a ton of money, have nice things, provide for your family. Those are great goals, but they're not good purposes. Purposes are found internal, and external things don't change that, because your purpose is who you are and what your life's mission is. So regardless of whether you're making money or not, or your business is being successful or not, that doesn't change your purpose, right? So I think a lot of people associate their purpose with their life goals. Yeah. Life goals are important, but it can't be your purpose, because let's say your purpose is your business or or selling houses. Well, what if that goes like out the door? Or sometimes people invest a lot of themselves into a relationship or a partner, and then that goes south, or something happens and they die, and then it's like you completely lose your identity and your purpose in life. So it's like your purpose is totally internal. It can't be based on what's happened to you externally. And that just like rang super true to me, because I was like, yeah, I've got these goals and that's great and all, but what's my purpose in life? Yeah. And like, what is it that's driving me, and what is it that's motivating me? And I also think I want to clarify is I think in the
in the academic world where people are pushing to go to college, and like, and maybe I think it's changing. I think it's very different than when you and I were being raised, but I think anybody that's around our age felt an immense amount of pressure to go to school so that you could kind of go and check that box almost.
Check the box, make the money, buy the house.
And money was almost second though to like doing what you love, right? And I also want to correct and say part of why I dropped out and part of what gave me the confidence to actually go and make that decision against what I would say is the common norm was making a little bit of money, was having a month where I made $10,000 for the first time and being like, oh, okay, I might not love this, but I don't know that I'm going to love anything more than it. And the income that it provides and the lifestyle that it provides
Checks are
is
good.
amazing. Right. And that's quickly turned into when my wife and I are getting married. Her dad died about 8 weeks before we got married.
Damn. When was this? When you were a loan officer? You guys, that's when you got married?
I was a loan officer at the time. I had made 6 figures at that point. I was starting to do really well in it. Being a loan officer was kind of a weird thing for me, especially when I made the decision to drop out, it was to go and be a loan officer full time. That was kind of committing to that plan. But I think pretty quickly I realized, okay, if I'm going to be in this, I want to be at the family business. I want to be at Edge.
Not at First Colony.
Not at First Colony. And no disrespect to First Colony.
Right.
Like, it didn't matter what they were. They could have been the coolest sports agency in the world. And it still would have been. It
just didn't feel complete.
When I decided I wanted to be in real estate, I looked at what my dad was doing and there wasn't anybody that was doing it better. And I think also because I've been doing stuff for them since I was a kid. Like I've been around, I've seen it when they were selling 40 houses in a year and that was like a successful year, right? I've seen them start and I've seen them to where they are today. And so when it was a few years ago, I was like, dude, I want to be there.
Right.
Tried for a year. My dad said no.
Tried. What do you mean you tried for a year?
I was a loan officer for a year.
Okay.
And then tried to get my dad to let me come over and sell.
And
he said no.
Why did he say no?
I don't know. I don't think I was ready at the time. I think that's a big portion of it.
He didn't think you were ready either?
I don't know. And that's a really interesting question because I used to take that type of stuff personally offensive to say, no, I don't think he did. But I don't think that just because he didn't think I was ready didn't mean that he didn't think I could still do it. And I think that that's like a really important thing for me to understand as a parent now. It wasn't that he didn't think I could do it. It was just that he didn't think I was ready and that there was other things that I needed to learn. And I think being at First Colony was an incredible vacuum for me to learn in where people were mean to me, right? Like where people were, it didn't matter who my dad was. It didn't matter anything. Like there's still managers there to this day that made me cry. They yelled at me, that pushed me like in ways that I had never been pushed because I wasn't working for my dad's company.
No special treatment, basically.
There was no special treatment. And I think it helped me understand. So like, let's just talk about the nepotism side of this for a second, right? So I got a job because of who my dad was.
At First Colony. Because you had zero experience.
I had zero experience. I had nothing. Like I was some punk ass kid that just served a 2-year mission that thought he knew everything in the world. First Colony gave me a chance because my dad was sending them 800 loans a year.
Right.
How many businesses, teams, real estate teams at all are sending 800 transactions a year to any lender? Right. There's 3 or 4 in the state, maybe, right? So when he said, hey, you're going to hire my son as a loan officer, they said what? Sure, yes, sir. Yeah, of course. And so I think I had to learn the importance of what I was actually doing as it relates to people's real lives. Right. So when I started, not only did I get the job because of my dad, but I was also able to get a guaranteed amount of business from the beginning as a small percentage of being on the quote unquote EDGEHomes loan team.
Oh, so you didn't just get on the company, you got on the EDGEHomes loan team, which is like steady.
Yeah. And I do want to say like we're talking about advantages and we're talking about benefits that I had when I was starting that other people didn't have. They absolutely existed and I want to acknowledge it. But at the same time too, the way that I was raised was not just to say thank you for that and then sit on my ass. And so the way that I was on the Edge team was if you go into our model homes, there's drinks in every fridge. Those are hand delivered by a different person every week. I was that person for 2 years.
Wow.
As a loan officer, not as like a drink runner, not like for me, that was just my way of marketing the Edge team and staying in front of them and saying hi. Gotcha. So I was literally loading up $400, $500 worth of drinks once every week or two and going model to model to model for 2 days of my week, marketing and getting to know the team and trying to win some of that business over. But I didn't take it as seriously as I should have because I was waiting for my dad to call me and say, hey, come sell at Edge. And I think, and that led to some of those discussions with other people on the team whose livelihood was on the line, and I wasn't taking it as seriously as I should have.
Whose livelihood was on the line? What do you mean?
The other loan officers on the team, right? So when I approached the business very sloppy at the time, like very lethargic, because I was a 22-year-old kid that was just like,
not a lot of responsibilities.
No,
yeah,
I didn't.
No kids.
No, I didn't understand the impact. Like I didn't understand. Trying to figure out it wasn't as important to me as it was to other people because I didn't feel the risk of being fired by my dad. I didn't feel the risk of losing the business because I didn't have to go and earn it.
Gotcha. So like you said, you were in college, so it was kind of just another job. Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I thought I was going to be at long term. It wasn't something.
So for lack of a better term, you kind of half-assed it. It's not that you did poorly, but you were just like, as far as total investment into that, you were like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Yeah.
And they were unbelievable and like working with me. And like, I mean, they were kind of in a terrible spot, like where they couldn't do a ton, right? So like they could.
Maybe that's why, I mean, I'm not trying to speak for your dad, but maybe that's why he wanted you to still prove something, because he's like, you can't come over to Edge and sell if you're still kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like I see you at, First Colony.
So that was the first 2 years that I was there. And so I had a really decent year, but I also started to realize that the other loan officers at the time that started at the same time I did, I knew what they were thinking. I knew that even though I was turning in the same numbers that they were every month from a volume standpoint, I knew mine had an asterisk on it.
Because you're Steven's dad.
Because I was getting the business.
Let's talk real quick on that, because one thing you said is you had a different starting line than a lot of people, and you had opportunities or different benefits, if you will.
I had a head start, right?
You had a head start, but I still don't think, I would still personally never hold that against you. I don't know, just because the way that I see it is that you have two options here. You can take full advantage of it and live up to your name and your family and these opportunities, or you can completely waste it, shit on it, and not do anything with your life. And I've seen both. I've seen people who come from money, or come from very powerful parents, and absolutely do nothing with their life. And that pisses me off the most, honestly.
And I'm right there with you.
I think you, as someone who comes from someone who has a lot of influence and success, have a responsibility. And this kind of ties back down to like how you were raised in high school, all the kids with the money, right? You have a responsibility to take full advantage of that. Now, whether you succeed or not, I think to an extent is a little irrelevant, but you got to at least go for it.
Well, success is different. Success is different for everybody.
Right.
It either messes with you one of two ways. And I think the way I feel very, very lucky that the way that it messed with me, it was like I was very aware of what people were saying.
Right.
And so because of that, so going into my third year as a loan officer, at this point I dropped out. I was engaged to my wife. I was all in at this point. For the first time in my life, I had some responsibilities. So I actually went to First Colony, the boss, Corey Shelley, who's like a very close friend and mentor over there. And I walked into his office, and this was at the end of the year. And I said, I'm going to get emotional talking about this. I said, I'm done. I said, I'm done with the Edge team. I want you to cut off all the business. I'm going to go and do this myself.
Wow.
And it was the first time I bet on myself. It was the first time where I was like, okay, I'm not going to let my dad's success be mine. I'm not like, I'm going to go, I'm in this. I'm going to go and actually like make this mine. And I'm going to make this, I'm going to get really damn good at this.
Why did you do that?
At the time, I would say it was because I knew what everybody else was saying, and I wanted to take that away from them. I wanted anybody that said the only reason that I was being successful was because of my dad. So when I made the decision to do it for myself and for my family at the time, I was trying to shut those people up.
Gotcha.
That was when I was Steven. That's when I'd introduced myself as Steven, and I was a little bit grumpier at that time, and I was angrier, and I was kind of trying to bully and fight anybody. And I was almost like making up shit in my head to fuel that, right? If we're being truthful, yeah, there's probably one or two people that would say stupid stuff about where the business came from. Majority of people I think though are really cool like you, and they don't look at it like that, right?
Right. And honestly, I personally think anyone who thinks that way or holds that against you or whatever, they're probably just unhappy with their own business. Let's be real.
And I'm a lot more confident in that now. And I'm a lot more comfortable in that now. And for me, it's a lot easier just to be honest and be like, yes, my dad did give me a head start. You can hold that against me or you cannot, but like, I absolutely am taking advantage of it. And I'm sorry that your parents didn't give you more of a head start. I hope that you can give your kids more of a head start than you got though.
Yeah. I think it can be great both ways. I think like, when like me, I came from nothing. I had a negative start. I had a delay of game, whatever you want to call it. Right. Yeah. But that also puts you in a mindset to drive you and make you, make something of yourself. Right. It's like my parents came from nothing. Everyone else has a way big head start, ahead of me. And so I am going to do something with my life and I want to be greater than everything. I want to make my parents proud. I want to do stuff for them. So it can go both ways. That's why, like, look at your dad. I mean, he also came from nothing and look at what he's accomplished. So, and
I think so that's what I use those voices for, was my version of that motivation.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know how to motivate myself at the time. I didn't know how to engage myself at the time. I had never done it before at a high level, I would say. And so for me, taking that risk was kind of the first time I had put myself in a position like what you're saying you grew up with naturally.
Right.
And obviously I know people are probably rolling their eyes like, dude, you didn't put yourself in any sort of a position like your dad had you. You're absolutely right. But like, I've never asked him to this day for $1 because I will provide for myself. Right. Like I'm not going to ask him for money. I'm not going to do these different things.
Right.
And so I say what you want. I was putting myself in a position where I would say I was vulnerable.
Yeah. You bet on yourself. So what did Corey say?
We had a 2-hour-long conversation. It started off with him telling me that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Shut up, because I should take full advantage of the opportunity that I had and just try to get more edge business and just try to take over what my family had already established. And then the more and more we talked about it, Corey's in the same situation I am. Corey's parents started First Quality Mortgage back in the day. And so once he calmed down and like, I think he's a big brother to me. And so I think if your little brother came to you and said, hey, I'm going to turn in what was probably at the time the equivalent to about $150,000 to $200,000 a year salary, right? Like that's really what I would say I was giving up by asking to be removed from the Edge team.
Yeah.
Just from guaranteed business that I didn't have to go and do anything on.
Right.
All I had to do was process the loans that came to me.
Right.
Once we talked through like those feelings of him being like, hey, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, I think he understood. And then he was all on board and doing everything that I needed to be successful.
Okay.
And so that was kind of towards the end of 2016.
Okay.
And I started to get really good at loans really quickly. It was amazing. My skill level increased, I would say, significantly. I was able to motivate myself for the first time to actually start to get good, and I actually wanted to get good at it. And I think the parts of it that I started to get good at were the parts that I would say I'm still good at my job today.
Yeah.
And I started to get really good real estate agent relationships. I started to become, I would say, like, I think if I stayed in mortgages, I still could have been a very successful lender, because the skill set that I use today is the same one that you need to be a successful loan officer, I think.
Right.
So when those numbers started to go and my production started to increase and I don't even want to say my brand started to go forward, but who I was as a person within the industry for myself started to be pushed forward for the first time. For the first time in my life, I pushed out the idea of going and working at Edge. I pushed out the idea of going and being a real estate agent. Like I was in it to win it with lending.
You were all in. No help.
No help. I was just going to go and obviously whatever. I have the same name as a dude, so like it would help me get in. I leveraged that absolutely. I used it to get to know people closer and better and quicker.
But you still had to show up.
Still had to go get the business.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
If I was a shitty loan officer,
doesn't matter what your last name is. Yeah, exactly.
Right? It really did. If I'm still to this day, if I'm terrible at what I do, are you going to use me?
No.
Why?
Actually, maybe.
Shout out. Good friend alert. No, but like I would hopefully never put you in that position. No. But like, it was around that same time. in my mind, like my dream scenario was my dad would call me into his office and he would say, son, I'm proud of you. You've absolutely been crushing it. Come and work for me.
That didn't happen.
It happened in his own way.
How did it happen?
They were just sitting there watching a Jazz game and just very haphazardly out of the blue said, hey, come work for me. And that was it. No accolade. That's just who my dad is, I would say. Like no, like, hey, props, no, like, hey, anything, just, hey, come and work for me. And that was it.
You think it's because you went all in? Because your third year,
I probably need to have that conversation with him.
Yeah, maybe. Because I don't want to speak for him.
I don't know what it is.
But just piecing it together, it almost kind of looks like, it's like, okay, this kid has now proven, is a man now. He's gone in.
I think I showed him enough spunk, probably. I think asking to take myself off the guaranteed business.
Yeah.
Probably showed him that I got a little fire in me somewhere.
Yeah. You can take risks.
Well, not only that, but like I think he knew that was me learning how to motivate myself and actually engage myself. I think he knows me at the time. I would say he probably knew me as a dad better than I understood myself. And I think he probably knew that was kind of always something that was hard for me to do, was to get myself to engage.
Right.
And I think that was probably what he wanted to see before, because it didn't matter what I did before I switched over to Edge. There was always going to be more nepotism talks. There was always, like, that was going to be shined on him for the first time ever.
Shined on him because it had already been shined on you.
And I think getting me a job at a different company, no matter how connected they were, it wasn't the same.
No,
it wasn't the same as going and working for your dad.
Directly under him now.
Yeah, like he runs sales, right? He's the top guy in sales at the company. Like,
right.
He's the CEO.
Right.
Him and his partner, they both have different tasks. One of my dad's is sales. So like I was going to be, anything that I did, I obviously had managers in between us.
Sure.
But anything that went wrong, if I failed, anything like that, if it went wrong, it would reflect on him for the first time.
Right.
And he had to make that decision, I think, and I had to show him enough to remove that buffer that First Colony was between us. And that's why I will always, like, even to this day, like, I still talk very highly of First Colony and the people over there because of the opportunity and some of the shit that I'm sure that they had to take for me being there.
So your dad just handed you basically your dream job, right?
Yeah.
The job that you had been really working towards for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And so what was your first month like there, or first year like there?
So I started in May. Normally they start you off with mentors for the first month.
Like a kind of training
like a
system.
Agent, you follow them for a few weeks. You
Shadow
do and normally they start off in groups of like 5 or 8 or 10. They'll bring on multiple groups of agents.
Okay.
They brought on one group in January where my best friend Caleb, you've met him.
Reap?
No, Van Dyke.
Oh, Van
Kyle.
Dyke, okay.
He started in January. They made me wait 4 or 5 months, and then I started in May on my own.
Okay.
I don't know why they did that.
On your own?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started on my own. They put me with an experienced agent for the first week and a half that I was there. And then, I mean, like legitimately 10 days in, I was covering models. I was like, I'm trying to learn how to learn from other people. It's like my goal this year, I think. Because the way that at the time, the only way that I knew how to do anything was just to go forward. And so I stumbled a lot. I just put myself in as many uncomfortable situations as I could early on to try to force myself to get better really, really quickly. So I started taking model shifts when I was nowhere near prepared to take model shifts, but just like, I'd rather learn in the field than in the boardroom at the office, like hiding from.
You'd rather learn by doing than by studying. That's why you weren't good at school.
At the time,
right?
Yeah, at the time. And now I'm trying to learn how to like.
It could be good. It could be good and bad.
I would much rather take, if you learn one way or the other, I would absolutely take the way that I learned for who I am as a person.
Sure.
I think who I am, I think who Boo is as an individual really, really enjoys learning like that, but it kind of kicks the shit out of you at times.
Right.
Just fumbling through and learning how to do things. It can be successful. Like in that first year, in 8 months, I sold 60 homes.
In your first year?
In my first year.
Holy shit.
So the last 8 months of the year, and I think I ended up like in the top 8 or 9 of the company.
In your first year?
In my first year, into the first 8 months.
So was there talk around that?
There was, good and bad.
Right.
It was an interesting time because I would say the way that I jumped into it was not calculated, was not planned, was not thoughtful, was not deliberate, was just like, I'm going to do everything that I can to sell houses at everybody else's expense. And so
everybody else's expense. What do you mean? Like other agents or like?
I didn't know what I was doing. So if you don't know what you're doing and you sell 58 houses in 8 months,
your inexperience can bleed over to.
Oh, not only did it, but like I pissed off everybody in the design studio, all of our designers. I pissed off all of our construction managers because I didn't know how to run a business of 58 transactions.
So by the end of your first year, everyone knew your name, whether that's good or bad.
Yeah. And like I established myself as somebody that could sell, but was not doing it in a way that was probably conducive to a company, which EDGEHomes at the time was.
Right.
If I was a solo agent and like I was putting stress on a transaction coordinator or something, we can figure that out.
Right. But it's an entire business with departments and processes and
so like when we don't
systems.
have earnest money turned in on a normal transaction, that's up to you to get as the agent.
Right.
On mine though, Edge has full-time people that are in charge of chasing down deposits and making sure that accounting is in line, because we sell $300 million worth of real estate in a year.
Right.
It's a full company. It's not just a team. It's not just a sales team.
Right.
I put a lot of undue stress and burden on other people because I just kind of fumbled through it. So I got a reputation as somebody that could sell, but I didn't maintain any relationships with the outside agents that I worked with at the time. Why? Because my opinion was, shut up and I'll send you your check in the mail. I'm better at this than you. I know how to sell this product. Shut up and let me just do this.
So was the bulk of those 60 first transactions in your year just like walk-ins then? You weren't networking with other agents?
So at the time, I didn't have any real estate agent relationships. And that also wasn't the focus like it is today at EDGEHomes. It was always the emphasis, but it wasn't ever the focus, I would say, like it is. Like we always made an emphasis to treat real estate agents the right way.
Sure.
I think now we've just taken it to a totally different extreme that no other builder has taken it to.
Right.
And so the majority of those were walk-in traffic. I would say I got really, really good at closing people in the model home. I got really, really good at going through the process. I think I looked like I was probably 17. I was 23 at the time. I wore a white shirt and tie every day. Nice. But I took model home shifts from everybody. So I think that like the average agent was sitting maybe 2 to 3 days a week. I was sitting 6.
Wow.
I would get there 30 minutes early. I would stay 30 minutes late. Like the amount of time that I put getting in front of the most people possible, I would say was higher than what the average person was doing at the time. Like I said, I didn't know how to do anything different. I just knew how to put myself in that situation.
So what was Courtney's take on all this after your first year? And you put in a lot of hours. And that's your first year of marriage? Second?
First year. Year? I switched over. We got married in February and I switched in April, like the end of April.
How was that?
Bless her heart, she didn't know what she was getting into. It's one of those things now that like we look back and it wasn't even a conversation. As like weird as that is to say, like, and I love her for this. She knew it was probably something that I had to do. And she has never not been as unbelievably supportive as possible. She has always been more than there for me. She's always picked up the slack, and she has always been all in on me going all in on myself.
I love that.
Which is just incredible. I don't like the level of support that I have behind me is unmatched.
Right.
And I wouldn't even say behind me. I would say next to me. Right. I think you understand the relationship that her and I have probably better than others, because I've been more open with you, but and at the time, neither one of us said anything about it. It was just what we did. She at this point had just lost her dad. And I think, going back to what we were talking about with money is a very interesting thing. It was the first time where I saw how much it could help my life because of the conversations her and I had in our first year of marriage. We never once in our first year, because I was making decent money, had to stress about it.
Right.
And so I think back to how hard that first year of marriage would have been, between first year of being married, first year for me being in a committed relationship.
Right.
And we had just lost her dad. I was in no way at 22, 23 years old capable of supporting that if I also had to have the conversation of, we don't have enough money
Money's
to
tight.
pay for. Yeah.
Well, it's going to alleviate a lot of stress and unnecessary.
And I think I just want to make that super, super clear that like, I think it is very, very important to be able to support your family with whatever decision you make.
Right.
And so I think she understood for the first time too, that what we were chasing was like not having to stress about that. And I think because of how she was raised, right? Her dad was sick for her entire life for the most part. All of their family's resources, like they were on welfare, like church welfare stuff, like picking up food from like I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but like they were
the bishop's kitchen. What do they call it?
The storehouse.
The bishop's
storehouse.
Yeah. We went there growing up.
The way that they were raised was very different than how I was raised.
Yeah.
And I think she saw what we were working towards and understood it probably better than I did at the time, what it would actually mean for our family. And so she was always on board. I would call other agents. I would lie to them. I would tell them like, hey, did you say I was going to, like if I knew that she wasn't going to, somebody didn't want to sit in a model home that day, I would call them and say, hey, I was just talking to my wife and like in my calendar, I'm supposed to be covering for somebody, but I don't know who I'm supposed to cover for today. Was that you? And they would say yes. And I would go work that day. So like she was all in on whatever it took for us to go and make as much as we could to support ourselves.
Wait, so you'd swindle the agents into covering?
Not swindling. It was like if I knew that they didn't want to sit there,
you'd take their shift.
I would call them and like take their shift from them. Yeah.
Without even a prior conversation.
Yeah. Just cause like if I wasn't on the schedule that day, I wanted to get in front of as many people as I possibly could. So basically you were
calling these agents and saying, hey, do you want a day off?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just sat models and I got as good as I could, as quick as I could.
Right. Okay. So then what year is that? 2016?
2017.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay. So your first year you crush it.
Yeah.
Maybe not the most graceful.
Yeah.
But you crush it and you're doing well.
Yeah.
So then the next year is good.
So 2018, I sold 58 houses, which was less and less time.
Okay.
But I would say I learned how to actually sell. Mm-hmm. I learned how to actually like take a buyer through the process and not lose the transaction halfway along the way.
Right.
Not lose the relationship with the agent along the way. Like I started to refine my business a little bit more.
Started focusing more on the longevity of it.
Yeah, because at the time I was selling 60, but there was other agents that were selling 80, 90, 100, 110. I think at the time the record in 2017 or 18 was 126 or something.
Right.
So there was other agents that I saw that were still like as good as I was. There were still those people ahead of me that were absolutely crushing it. And I wanted to try to figure out how to get to that level. And I think in 2018, I started to learn how to do that.
Okay.
And then in 2019, I jumped up to 75 transactions.
Okay.
And I think the only way that I was able to do that was because I slowed down a little bit in 2018 to actually put my business into place.
Right. Kind of recalibrate.
Yeah. And try to get a little bit more, less shotgunny.
Right.
And a little bit more effective with my time.
Right.
And at that time, I was still just an ungodly amount of hours though that I was putting in getting better.
Right.
And then at 2019, I sold 75 and around the end of 2019, it was in September. Uh-huh. That's kind of when I was like, okay, I'm up here with some of the higher selling agents. What do I need to do to take the leap to be the dude?
The guy.
Yeah.
Was that so that was 2019. Was that when we met?
We met kind of towards the beginning of 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a funny story. I want to tell that story.
That's a great story.
So,
and I'll tell you my side of it too, because that's funny.
So yeah, my side of it was, I had used an agent there. His name was Eric Campbell. He's no longer with Edge. No. And then he left Edge, and then I was kind of like up in the air, like, who do I use at Edge? I don't know how I got introduced to, should I name drop?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
David.
Yeah. David Hodges. Great agent. Great guy.
Fantastic agent.
Is he still there?
Yeah.
He's still okay.
He's doing really well.
Good. I forgot how I got introduced to him. I think the team that I was on before I went to the Perry group, like basically said like, this is our new Edge guy. And we're like, okay, this is our new Edge guy. And he was fine. I don't think we ever did a deal together, but then you started kind of stalking me a little bit.
Well, and I had asked Michael to introduce us, right? Michael and I had started building our friendship and our relationship kind of around that time, and you would join. So I was like, oh, this is convenient. And then there's eyes and ears everywhere. And you know, like I do this for a living. So whenever you were out showing with other agents, I knew where you were at.
Yeah,
the whole time.
It was creepy, but it was almost a little.
You kind of liked it.
I kind of liked it. It was flattering. That's the word I was looking for. I would be out showing with David or whoever was there, and you would shoot me a text like, "Hey, just so you know," like you would basically provide value to me.
That one was a coincidence. That one was a coincidence. I didn't know that the timing on that one was a coincidence.
Yeah,
that wasn't. I just don't want anybody to think I was texting other people's clients while they were meeting with you.
Well,
but I was texting you based on, because Michael and I were talking at the time, and he's like, hey, you need to meet this dude.
Right.
Yeah.
But my thing was like, you in no way were trying to steal me or take me away from David or that transaction, but you showed up and you texted me and you gave me value. I forgot what it was, but you gave me some tip. You were like, hey, just so you know, like, I don't know if it was like this, how many offers are on it, or, you know, we just got this. You gave me some kind of value. And I was like, what? I was a little confused, right? I was like, this.
You were in a multiple, and Michael reached out to me because him and I had won a couple of multiples earlier on.
Right.
And so he had kind of asked me to reach out and say, hey, these are some of the things that you're going to want to do to win.
Right. And so my other agent wasn't providing those things to me. And I was just like, okay, this guy seems like he really wants to get to know me.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, we just kind of started talking.
Yeah. And I think all of that was because towards the end of 2019, I had set a goal. I wanted to make $1 million in a year.
Yeah.
I don't know where I came up with that number. I was just like, that sounds good.
Sure.
Like, that's kind of like the goal. And so I reverse engineered. I was sitting in church one day, and one of the last times I sat in church, probably some of the best inspiration I've ever got in church too, I would say.
Good.
But I worked backwards and I said, okay, in order to make $1 million, how many houses do I need to sell? And the number ended up being, I went all the way with it. I said 160 homes, which, keep in mind, at the time I was selling, I had sold about,
70.
I was probably like 65 or 70. I was trending towards 75, 80 transactions.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I almost need to double my production in order to hit $1 million.
Right.
Factored cancellations in, and I set the number was 146.
Wow. Okay.
So I just sell 146 net, 165 gross contracts in 1 year in order to make 7 figures. And so going into 2020, my goal was to split the difference. So I needed to go from about 8 transactions to 16 a year. My goal for 2020 was, I think the goal was about 10.5 to 11 contracts per month.
Gotcha.
And so for the first time in my life, I said, how do I do this more effectively than I'm currently doing it? And I got very crystal clear on what my business was going to start to look like. Right. Going into that year to start to hit those numbers.
And that's when you started focusing more on agent outreach versus burn and turn, no relationship. And just so you know, I don't remember every conversation we had. I remember every text we had when you first started stalking me or whatever. Right. But
trying to earn your business,
trying to earn my business. But what I did feel was like, this guy is real. He's genuine. He's good at his job. Michael's referring him, so he must be good. But it really felt like you really wanted to just get to know me as a person too, and just like connect, which is important to me. I mean, I'm sure you get it too, but like, I get texts and calls and DMs all day from loan officers, title people. They want to take me to lunch. Well, they want something from me, and I hate that. It's like, no, you don't want to get to know me. You want something from me. And I hate that feeling. And so I will turn those away all the time, or I just won't even respond. Yeah. It didn't feel like that with you. And I don't know how you did it, what you said, or the way you carried yourself, but whatever you did, I was drawn towards it. And I was like, yeah, I want to get to know this guy.
Well, I think for me, I got crystal clear on who my client was. Mm-hmm. And in a transaction that I represent the seller, I represent EDGEHomes. EDGEHomes is very different from any seller that you work with, because Edge is going to do what Edge is going to do.
Right.
It doesn't matter what I suggest. Edge is going to do it.
Right.
Edge, you should take this offer. Screw you, no.
Right.
Like, because Edge is a company, and it's a very different way.
It's not like a seller where you have pull to like negotiate or talk them down.
Yeah. And so the way that I realized, the way that my dad had set up this business that I was working in was to create an unbelievable experience for the buyer. And he took that super, super personally.
Right.
And I think that that's felt when you go through the transaction with us. Right. The way that Edge takes care of buyers from the very beginning, as far as the process, the availability of floor plans, lots, options to select, like no other builder, I would say, operates the same way that we do and that you and your clients have felt.
Totally.
And I realized that it's not my job for that experience to go well for that buyer.
Right.
Why? Because that's not my client.
Right.
That is Edge's client, and that is your client, but that is not my buyer.
So who's your client?
You are, as the agent. And so for the first time, I said, how do I help agents sell more houses? Not even just EDGEHomes, but can I go around and start trying to create more value for people and help them sell more houses? Hopefully more EDGEHomes, right?
Sure.
But can I start to educate people on new construction, get them interested? Because at the time, new construction had a terrible reputation within the real estate industry. Yeah. And so I kind of went the other way, and I said, let me tell you what this builder is doing that I think is really, really cool, that creates a lot of value. So I wouldn't even say I figured out, I don't even think I created value, but I just started trying to demonstrate and give value for free that was already there.
You did. And I think the biggest value point that you provided me, and I know other agents because I've had the similar conversation with them, is you taught us how to pitch edge.
Yeah.
It was no longer, I mean, obviously you were there more than, most of the time. Right. But at the same time, I had already sold them.
Yeah.
We had talked about townhomes, condos, told them about the deposits, told them about the process, told them about X, Y, and Z, because I was basically just repeating everything that I was watching you do in person. So that by the time we got together, you just closed them. Yeah. Right. And it was what they wanted to do, and it was in their best interest, but it was, you basically taught me how to pitch edge.
Yeah. And I think I did it in a way that was not only just edge, but new construction in general.
Right. Like I remember one thing you've
sold more new construction, not just edge, but you've sold.
It's true.
Like
I did sell.
Like new construction is a big portion of what your business is. I'm a small portion of that new construction, or a decent portion of that new construction.
But you had
business.
a big impact.
Yeah. And
because there's other new construction agents that I've worked with have not provided as much value as you have in new construction, not just edge, than you have.
When I think this is where I start to differ from lenders and different people like that are trying to get agents business, is that I didn't approach it expecting business in return. I think I just understood that if I'm really, really good at this and you can convince your buyers to look at new construction, right, I am the best option.
Right.
Like I think if more lenders and different people like that approached business the same way, like, listen, and I would tell you guys this, I'm not a fit for every buyer.
Right.
But if you're going new construction, look out for this, look out for this, and look out for this.
Exactly. One of the best things that I think you always say to my buyers, and it's true and it's genuine, I know it is, and you say, listen, if you don't buy an edge home, just promise you'll buy something, because it's going to be the best thing for you. Yeah. Right. So it's like, whether you work with me or not, go buy something. Okay. And as an agent, I'm like, damn, this guy wants me to not just to help them buy an edge home, but he wants me to close these guys to regardless of where we go. And he's providing all this value. And the clients feel that too. And they're like, okay, this guy's not just trying to sell me. Now, when we put things side by side together, builder versus builder, edge wins most of the time. Right.
But I think that's how every agent, I think that's how everybody should run their business. Right. Is that I'm not going to be everything for everybody. This is something that I learned from my dad as he started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Right. When we first started at EDGEHomes, if you came in and said, I wanted this, and I wanted this, even if it wasn't in our design studio, we would figure it out. Right. We were kind of a custom builder at the time. I don't even want to say custom. We were going full custom on builds, but at the same type of pricing that we have today. Gotcha. Eventually, in order to scale and sell the amount of units that we do today, we had to start saying no to a lot of different things that at one point in our company's history, we allowed. And my dad had to come up, instead of trying to be everything for everybody, we're going to be really, really damn good for this amount of people. Right. And I think that's what I started to implement into my own business, was that I'm not going to be great for every agent. Right. I'm not, you might not sell a single edge house, but I'm going to create value for as many agents as I can. And I think the business will be there on the other side for those that registers with. Right. And for those that works with. Right. And I think I got comfortable losing business for the first time. And I also took another big bet on myself. I think I've learned that I'm better in uncomfortable situations. Right. And so.
Good under pressure.
Well, so I had sold 75 as a model home agent.
In 2019. And the number to hit in 2020 was 146.
I was trying to, that was what I was going to need to hit. I was trying to hit, I think 110 or so, right? I had to sell, if I had sold 75, I think it was like a 68 or 70 net. I had to sell, I wanted to hit an extra 30 that year. Right. So it's an extra 2 to 3 transactions a month. And I knew that I needed to get those from real estate agents.
So that was the goal.
And so because of that, I followed the lead of some other awesome edge agents, and I stepped out of the model home rotation entirely. Right. So I once again, and I'm super grateful that I did it at First Colony first and kind of took that gamble on myself for a short amount of time. But I asked for that guaranteed business to kind of be removed, right? Because I knew, I didn't know. What I felt like was that if I could go spend more time with real estate agents creating value for them, I could go and increase my business more than sitting around and hoping that somebody walks into the model today.
Waiting for something to come in versus you going out there. Going out and get there. You're right. Because it could be dead or they just look you lose. So how many did you sell in 2020?
202.
Wow. That's crazy.
It was a crazy year.
That's a crazy amount.
It was insane.
Wow. So you crushed your goal.
Yeah. And in like July.
What do you accredit that? Do you accredit that to the relationships you built with your agents, or what was the mindset shift that kind of helped you achieve such a crazy goal?
It was the first year that I would say I was calculated. It was the first year that I would say I was intentional about the business that I was operating in and not letting the business operate me. And I think a lot of people that are in commission that aren't, I want to make it very clear. I don't look at myself as an entrepreneur. There's a lot of agents I think that look at like they're their own boss. They're this, they're this, they're this. I've never looked at myself as an entrepreneur. I've seen what my dad has gone through. I've seen the stresses that he has had. I don't have the same stresses as him. And I think it's like disrespectful almost to call myself that because of that. But that doesn't mean that you can't still operate your business.
Sure.
And so I think I started to actually put things into place to be successful from a business and to be more deliberate in what I was doing. And I think that's what it meant to me to run it more like a business. So I hired my first assistant. It was Al. I hired my baby brother who had just come home from his mission and kind of same thing as me, looked at it and said, you know what, I think real estate's the gig. I'm going to jump in it.
Yep.
And he just started running with me. And it was incredible because I didn't know what I needed at the time. I just knew I needed help.
Right.
He started with me in March of 2020, right before COVID hit. And it was a roller coaster from there. But I think I got deliberate and intentional for the first time and started to run it like a business, also with a goal in mind. Very specific about the numbers that I needed to hit, very specific about the amount of agents that I needed to hit. And this is like, I got super, super calculated towards the end of 2019 in breaking down exactly who I wanted my clients to be for the year of 2020.
Right.
Like, I still have the piece of paper, but going into 2020, when I knew I needed more real estate agents, I went through the MLS for the entire city for the entire Salt Lake County and figured out where I could go and find the most amount of agents that have never done transactions with Edge. And I put down 3 different teams on that hit list, if you want to call it that. And one of them was the Perry Group.
What were the other 2? Curious.
It was Stern Team and it was Liz Slate. No. Who's the other big producer in that KW office?
KW. It's not Bustos. Bustos is in Midvale.
No, is it Liz? I'm so pissed I'm forgetting her name. I'll have to look at it.
Liz, it's not Liz Lager, is it?
No.
Oh, that's different. She's KW. So like,
it was another third big team in that KW office. And the reason I wanted that was because I had made a new relationship with a different agent in there, Spencer Williams. If you know Spencer, unbelievable dude and agent. I learned, that was the first time I'd asked for referrals, really. I had always felt uncomfortable doing that because I never felt like I was good. I don't know. The transactions, remember, early on weren't going very well for me. So I didn't feel like I could actually ask for a referral. So I started to take care of the agents that I worked with a little bit better in that year, 2019. And then I realized, okay, the quickest way for me to gain friendship or a relationship with you is to be introduced by somebody that you already trust and respect.
Right.
So I started asking, I knew I had an in at your office or at the KW office in Sugar House.
Right.
So I went and found the 3 biggest producing teams that were in there. Michael Perry's name was on the list. I met with him and Mason and Ashley and it didn't go well.
No?
It was terrible.
What happened?
I didn't know how to create value at the time. I didn't know, to me, the value add was just shut up and let me sell the house for you. Which doesn't get anybody anywhere.
So you basically showed up and were like, hey, will you please use me?
I thought I was a big deal. Michael thought he was a big deal. Like it didn't, he was very clear. He didn't go south of 7,200 or 50. Like I don't remember what address he said.
And now he owns how many EDGEHomes? homes?
4, I think 3. I don't know. But it didn't go well. Like that was kind of towards the end of September of 2019. I was like, holy crap. Like if I can't go and get the other 23-year-old, 24-year-old kid's business, like what am I doing?
Right.
And so it was a really good reality check for me. And then leaving the model homes, like I didn't have a choice. I had to get good really quick. And Michael not calling me back for the first 30 days was really good for my business. And I came back different. Like I knew I had to change something. And so when I left the models, I decided I'm all in with you guys. And I think I just showed up differently. Right. I would show up to call night, right? I'd go cold call with you guys for an hour or 2. I'd bring energy drinks. Like I invested in helping grow your business.
Right. And
then it was easy to ask for referrals from there.
Right. Totally. I love that. I love like hearing about how you provided value and kind of the whole story behind that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was your like selling 202 homes in 1 year?
Yeah.
First thing I think is like, you must be stressed. You must be running around with your head chopped off.
Yeah.
Like the most I've ever done is 50 in a year. New construction resale, a little different, right? But not to downplay that. But like, I can't imagine like my stress levels when I sold 50 in 1 year was like through the roof, right? Like how did you manage it? All of that?
Manage the stress or manage the pipeline?
Both, not the stress. I would say the mental capacity it takes.
I didn't. I shoved it down and acted like it wasn't there because I felt like I didn't really give myself time to do that. I didn't take days off. I didn't take nights off. I didn't take Sundays off. I didn't take anything. And the joke that I made at the time was that my wife did everything for me except sell houses. And I was like very open and vocal about that. And I put literally everything in my life second to selling houses. There was not a single thing that came in between me and selling a house that year. Not one time. For an entire year straight, right? When you add up 202, it's a house every 36 hours for an entire year straight.
Do you regret that?
No, not at all. And no, I think I had to do that. Once again, coming from successful parents does some things to you.
Sure.
I think if I had never done that, right? I mean, keep in mind the previous record at the time was 126 and I hit 202. Like I absolutely shattered the record at my dad's company.
Right.
That unlocked something in me and relieved like pressure that I didn't know I was feeling. Like if I didn't unlock that, I'm not sitting here today the same way that I am.
So it took a lot of weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, it took I think my biggest question was, can I do this? Right? You have a successful dad. You've been given at that time, I think I am aware of the advantage that I have for the first time because I started to actually acknowledge it. And I used to pretend like it wasn't there. I used to pretend because I hated when people would say stuff.
Right.
And I wanted to tell them it's not there. It's not there. You don't understand how I was raised. You don't know what my dad was like. You don't know what it was like.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, I'm a rich kid. Right? Like I grew up with a dad. I didn't have to worry about paying for sports. I didn't have to worry about new shoes. I didn't have to worry about clothes. I didn't like a lot of the things that like everyday people have to live with. My dad removed entirely. And I think when I started to realize that and actually have respect for that, I started to be able to acknowledge the head start that I had and the advantage that I had.
Accept who you are.
Yeah. And understand like, okay, you know what? I do have an advantage. I had a massive advantage. And because of that, if I didn't do certain things, I was going to feel like I failed what my dad had given me. Like if I wasn't capable of being really, really, really good at this, I was letting down what he had created for us.
That opportunity.
Yeah. Like what he had just busted his entire ass for a generation. I was spitting on.
You had to live up to it.
Yeah. And I don't think it's going back to what we were talking about with the parents in high school. I don't think I needed to sell I'm going to retract that. I know I didn't have to sell 202 houses for him to love me. I know that the day that I sold 202 houses didn't change at all how he felt about me. In my mind, it did. In my mind, like when I showed him, right, I used to tell everybody growing up, when I started to see the success more and more, that I wanted to be bigger than my dad, that I wanted to be more successful than my dad. Not because I actually wanted that, but because because I wanted to be his equal. I wanted to be worthy of what he had created, like what he had built.
Do you measure that success in monetary value then?
No, not in monetary value, because I think he did a good job of teaching that if you're really good at what you do, the money will be there. So I don't think I had to make $1 million to feel that. Like I think it was in my mind, I had to be that much better than everybody. I'm more like, I don't know who it was that sold the second most homes that year. I know I was more than double them. Which if you're on a sales team with 25 or 30 people, you generally don't see that.
Right.
Like I had to do that in order to prove to myself that I was worthy of what he had given me, I think. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
It was more for me than it was for anybody else.
So you've accomplished you've conquered this huge mountain, right?
Yeah.
And you've crushed this goal that you've had. You've set all these records. You're super successful in your business and financially, right? But I feel like that drive and that mindset that you took to crush that, you could also apply towards different areas in your life.
Yeah.
Have you seen, after having that year, you be able to use that kind of like tap back into that mindset from when you were selling houses into other areas of your life?
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things that year taught me was how to actually engage myself for the first time ever. Like, it was the first time where I was aware of what I was doing, not just kind of doing it. But what I realized is at the end of 2020 is I had a daughter that I didn't have a relationship with, who was 3 years old, 2.5 years old. That's there. I had a wife that I hadn't seen in a year that had kind of been holding everything down and was going through her own stuff. I was a pissed off person. I was angry because the way that I had learned to engage myself was by taking what I thought everybody was saying and using that as my fuel and my propulsion to just beating everybody.
You're mad at the world, so you're going to go beat everyone.
Yeah. And that wasn't healthy for me. That's not who I am as a person. And I think, in 2021, I slowed down. I sold, I think 120 or 130 that year. But for the first time, I took Sundays off. And for the first time, I was a little bit more aware of what I was doing. And it was kind of time for me to start putting that energy back into still selling, but also figuring out how to do it and still be a human at the same time.
Right.
And how to have relationships with people and how to be present for my kids and how to be present for my wife. And I used what I had learned, like to go a little bit more introspective and say, okay, how can I get better at being there for my wife? And how can I get better at being there for my kids?
Right.
Not selfishly, not what I think that they need, not what, right. Going back to watching what I did to gain real estate agents business was when I stopped saying, hey, this is what's best for you. And just said, I'm going to try to create value for you and take back whatever advantage comes my way and be super grateful for it. When I started to approach my situation with my wife and my relationship with my kids that way, of I'm going to give you the value that you need, not the value that I think you need. Right. My relationships changed.
Okay. So the last few years, the main big focus has been on engaging with your family and your connections and your relationships with them.
Yeah. And I think more than that, like finding out what's truly important to who Boo is as a person. I think it was so important for me to go and accomplish and sell what I did, like I did, to get that monkey off my back, so to speak.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, now it's time to figure everything else out in my life.
So,
and I don't think I could have been able to without, and maybe I could have, but I don't feel like I could have done that without first seeing that success, because that was like that's what I've known since such an early age.
Right. If you know what it takes to sell 202 houses in a year, would you do it again?
No. Yeah, no, it not because of like anything deep or anything crazy. It's just like, I don't care to make that a priority like that. There's other things that are more important to me. Like, we didn't go to lunch that first year, right? Like, you and I didn't just go hang out. Like, the only times that we would really interact was if you called me and said, hey, I have a buyer.
Right.
You happen to have a lot of buyers at the time. So we got to, I say at the time, you still have a lot of buyers. Don't let me be offensive.
No, that's good.
But it worked out really well because we were able to do a bunch of transactions and we were talking often, and that morphed into a friendship, but not because of anything that I was deliberately trying to do to be a friend for you.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Right. I would rather go to lunch now and spend time with you and do fewer transactions with other agents that I don't enjoy spending that time with. Like I would rather sell 80 houses or 60 houses, right? I can still have a hell of a life and a hell of a living, doing this how I want to do it and not doing it just because I need to be successful at it. So I don't care where I come in on the team this year. I have my number. I used to be able to tell you what every single Edge agent's numbers was at any given point, where they got the majority of their business, what agents it was. Like, I was so focused on what other people were doing that I wasn't paying attention to the people close to me.
Right.
And now I don't care. Now my goal is to be able to go to Mexico with my wife, have relationships with agents that if you call me and you say, hey, I have a buyer for you, and I say, hey, I'm in Mexico today, I'm on a plane tomorrow, can we meet on Friday instead? I want to work with agents to say, yes, that works.
Right. Totally.
Instead of bending over trying to take it from as many agents as I can to try to sell as many houses as I can.
Right. And that'll affect other people in your life.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Now I want to be able to say, hey, like, if you call me late at night, probably not going to answer because I'm with the kids.
Right.
If you text me and say, hey, I need you to call, great. Like, I have my business set up now that like I can figure my life out. My wife and I are in a lot better of a spot now where it used to be that everything that I did was work, and that was all of the time that we spent together.
Right.
So whenever phone calls would come in, it became, I was always on my phone. I would hang out with her for an hour and a half or 2 hours, maybe a week. And other than that, I was working.
Right. Now
it's a lot more balanced to where, and I think I'm a lot more deliberate than I was too. So the time that I spend now with people is better and it's more efficient and it's more effective. I think that's how you find balance, or at least that's how I've been able to find balance.
Right.
Is being more deliberate in those times when you are with the people that you want to spend time with, so that when you do need to say, hey, sorry, I need to go meet with these buyers, right? I prioritize and say, hey, these are the things that I will miss time for. These are the things that I won't. And it means more to my family now when I don't, or when I do miss certain things. And it allows them to also, I think, have a little bit more tolerance when I say, hey, I need to go and work for a little bit.
Right. Because you've already allocated for that time and for those appointments, and then for your family time. And
when I think that they understand that they're my priority now.
Right.
And I don't think that you could have made that same argument. Like I look back at the relationship that I thought I had with my kids 2 years ago, and it's completely different. The amount of time that I spend with them is more, but it's not drastically more, I wouldn't say. Like in order to sell 70 to 80 houses a year, like it is still very much a full-time job where I'm still going to be on my phone. I'm still going to be emailing, but it's just the time now that I spend is a lot more deliberate and a lot more effective, I think.
What advice would you give yourself if you had to do it all over again in 2020?
Go for it. Like what that year taught me was how to slow down to speed up. I think I would just try to shortcut that for myself as much as I can. Mm-hmm. But I would also tell, like, I'm more effective when I take time for myself. I'm more effective when I make myself a priority.
Right.
And when I make the people around me a priority. Like, I actually am better at this job when I do that.
You got to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And being better at this job isn't just selling more houses anymore.
Right. It's being intentional about your relationships with people, with clients, with your family. And
so like this trip that my wife and I just went on a few weeks ago was, I would say, the very first time where I've been able to go on a trip, and it was an enjoyable trip with my wife.
Right.
Like, it legitimately took 6 or 7 years of doing this job to get to the point where we didn't fight about work. We didn't fight about anything, and we were still able to sell a few houses while we were down there.
Right.
Like, it was like an unbelievable trip. And it was only because for the last 3 years, we've been working very hard to find that balance.
Good. I'm glad you found that, because that's important. I think a lot of times as highly driven salespeople, we say, we want to hit all these goals for our family, to provide for our families, to prove something maybe, right? But at what expense?
Well, at some point it becomes not about that.
It doesn't, right? It becomes a little more selfish, right? So I'm glad you realize that, money is important, but it's definitely not everything.
Yeah.
And that your relationships and the connections that you have with your people is by far a lot more important than an extra 10 houses you could sell.
When I look at that too, now I loved making the amount of money that I was making, right? Like, if I'm being fully transparent, like making $1 million a year versus I'll make less than that this year, but making that amount of money was incredible. So now the goal is, okay, how can I make more money in less time, right? Because now I have these things that I'm not going to give up.
Right.
I'm not going to give up driving my daughter to school 3 days a week. I don't care what I miss. I'm going to be doing that. Like, I have these things now that I have earned over the last few years, these non-negotiables for me that I am not giving up. That also means, though, that my goal is going to be to try to figure out how to take that next step in the least amount of time possible and still being able to maintain those things.
Right. So what's next?
I have no idea. I I tried a couple of things last year and I took a couple of gambles on myself, and it's been very interesting to watch what's still standing after last year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but for the first time I feel very content, and I feel like I'm along the path, and I'm just like very, very excited in the direction that I'm heading. I would say I'm enjoying selling for EDGEHomes more than I have in my entire time here.
Good.
It's been more balanced. It's been just in the last 3 or 4 months since I've kind of pushed back into this. It has been the most enjoyable. It's been the most relaxing. It's been the most rejuvenating that it has ever been. And it's very fun to see kind of that business side become a little bit more balanced for me in my life.
Well, it's becoming fun for you again, because let's be real, it probably burned you out.
It did.
Selling that many houses would burn anyone out.
Yeah.
And it's just like mentally exhausting. So
yeah, and I think that was what the year of 2020 was for. Or sorry, 2022. Did I say 2022? Yeah.
2022.
Yeah, that's what I think 2022 was for me. Was kind of checking the box of selling that many houses. I felt like I had accomplished kind of like everything that young Boo had set out to do.
Yeah, nothing left to prove. I was married.
My wife was super cute. I had a cute little family.
Got a cool house.
Had a cool house. Car. I was top salesman in my dad's company at 25, 26 years old. Like, it's a weird thing to say, and it's probably a short-sighted thing to say, but everything that I had like focused on, like that was such a big thing for me because of how I was raised.
Right. I
couldn't even look past that. And I think for the last year and a half or 2 years, once that was checked, I've been trying to figure out like, okay, now who am I?
Right.
And I think now I'm understanding, and I'm more comfortable with who I am as a person in the world. And I don't know what's coming next, but I'm super excited for it.
I'm excited to see what's next for you.
I appreciate that.
I just want to let you know that I value our friendship, and that you've always been someone super real I can talk to and get on a deeper level, none of this surface level bullshit.
Yeah.
And I love to see, I've only known you for what, maybe 3 years, 4 years, but like you've changed a ton.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah. And
that's a great compliment.
Yeah, no, in a really good way too. And I love that you are becoming a lot more conscious of your relationships and what really matters in life. Again, money is very important.
Yeah. And it has to be there.
It has to be there, or else you're going to have bigger issues. Right. But at the same time, it can't be everything. Right?
I agree.
Because that's not what will make you feel fulfilled. And I love being around people that have that same mindset. So
yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Any last advice that you would give anyone that wants to get into selling new construction?
Do it. I think it's a great way to augment a portion of your business. I also think we're about to see a massive decline in available inventory over the next 12 months. I think you're going to see market to market, but I think you're going to see less people selling houses because of what their interest rate is. You're going to see people, I think, moving less. I think buyers are going to be the way of the future. And I think buyers are going to, for the last couple of years, it's been very list heavy, right? List focus, list emphasis. But I think over the next 3 to 4 years, a big portion of people's business is going to come from buyers, and inventory is going to be down. I think new construction is a fantastic route to be a portion of your business, regardless of where you live.
For sure.
So find some good referral partners. They're not even referral partners. You're getting paid on the outside as representing the buyer. Go and be like knowledgeable. Yes, there's some shady things that builders have done. Be knowledgeable though. And I think if you can, it's amazing the amount of buyers that you're able to suggest it to that actually might not have brought it up before, but are very interested. I think it'll be a great way to get people onto something in the next couple of years.
Love it. I agree, by the way. Where can people contact you if they want to reach out to you?
Tag my socials. Put everything down below.
Okay.
You putting stuff on YouTube yet?
Not yet. Well, it's gonna be.
It will be.
Yeah, it's gonna.
So
everything's gonna be everywhere.
Great. I like stuff coming through Instagram because I kind of like tracking where my deals come from.
For sure.
And so I love when somebody reaches out to Instagram first, because that means it was just social media stuff.
Right.
So yeah, DM me on Instagram.
Okay. Thanks, Boo. I appreciate you being here,
brother. You, homie.
Love you, man.
Love you.
Thanks for listening to the Mindset with Mako podcast, sponsored by Mako Real Estate LLC. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review. And if you know someone with an amazing story to share, DM me on Instagram at AdrianMako_Utah Realtor. Until next time, remember, if you want to change your life, you must first change your mindset.